In this video, I will be going over something that 99% of Amazon sellers do not get involved with when doing Amazon FBA. So the reason why so many sellers will not get involved with what I'm about to go over strictly has to do with the fact that there's not a lot of information out there on this topic. Now, what this is that I'll be going over is called hazmat. And now what this is something that you have to get approved for on your Amazon FBA account. Now, there is ways to go around this, which is selling through FBM. And our first product that we actually bought that we did not realize was hazmat, we ended up spending roughly around $3,000 on, and we had to liquidate it through selling it through FBM. At this time, early in the stage of being an Amazon FBA seller, we had no clue what hazmat was, what is also known as dangerous goods. And this is something that we did not know at all how to actually avoid, what it even meant. We knew nothing. So if you ever going through any of your analytics and reading your data, anything that says DG means as dangerous goods. It could also have an H, which means hazmat, and those are something that most sellers will tell you to avoid. And the reason why is because most accounts are not approved to sell hazmat or aerosol. And if you are someone who does have that unlocked on your account, even if they start you off at 5 cubic square feet, you are still going to want to utilize that and actually find a way to upgrade it to even more space, because hazmat in dangerous goods is something that is so much easier to be able to sell on because there's a lot less competition. Because you have to remember, most people who sell in dangerous goods or hazmats have to be very specific about what products they pick because they only get so much storage. With most Amazon FBA seller accounts, they almost give you unlimited storage, so you can send in however much you want and whatever you are able to sell. So when it comes to dangerous goods / hazmat, the biggest obstacle that you're going to find is, one, making sure your account gets approved for hazmat, and number two is how to actually ship these items into Amazon for as cheap as possible. When we first started out and had to learn all this information, it was one of the hardest things because, like I said, there's nothing out there showing you how to get hazmat unlocked in your account, how to actually ship the items, where can you ship it, because you can't use a partnered carrier with Amazon FBA. So the first thing you definitely will want to do is just make sure that you sell items on your account. This is not something that you're going to get approved for right away. We found that after 2 months of selling on the platform, we ended up getting a message through the support case from Amazon asking if we wanted to actually get involved with hazmat. We replied yes, and that's how we started off getting storage. Now, once we started off, we only got 5 of aerosol, 5 of flammable, and what we ended up doing was sending in items through that, and then we requested more and more space, and now we're up to 26 of each. Now, for a lot of people that don't understand what cubic square feet is, having 26 is a decent amount of space, especially if you're sending in really tiny items. Of course, at the end of the day, you want to keep upping it, so every time we get close to filling that up, we then just request more and more space, so that way we can keep growing it and growing it. Now, to go over the shipping, this is arguably one of the hardest parts about doing hazmat, because it's something that no one really gives information on. We literally called USPS, talking to them about how we can ship our inventory into Amazon. And on top of all that, when you do ship items in, it is extremely expensive. Now, when we go through 2D workflow, because that is what we use for prepping our units, we will have times where we send in 300 units of one specific item, and they have us send 96 to one location, and the other 100 to a different location, and even another 100 somewhere else. So they split up our units pretty often, which makes it extremely hard because you can't just send a pallet out unless you're doing full truckloads, because then it's, of course, obviously very cheap. But then you have to remember, when you're sending out so much, the bigger issue that you will have to deal with is where they actually place these items. Because say you're sending out a full truckload to one place, then if they split up your units, you cannot include those units onto your pallet. So this is where it becomes extremely difficult, especially if you are someone doing full truckloads, because now you have to change up everything you're doing. What I would recommend you to do when it comes to shipping in hazmat is probably do your best to find as many items as possible that are extremely small and that you're able to buy a lot of units of, because what you're trying to do here is maximize how much space that you have, but also be able to actually ship out not a full pallet's worth of items and still be able to have decent shipping. Because you have to remember, if you're only able to send in 1,000 units and they split them up and you might only be able to put 400 units onto one pallet, you got to make sure that your shipping is extremely cheap so that way you can compete. Now you're going to notice a lot of items that sell under the hazmat, you're going to see ROIs being as high as 80-90%, but then after you put $1 in for shipping, you're of course going to see that drop. So that's why you need to make sure that you have big ROIs when it comes to hazmat. Now the key to actually being able to profit a lot more than any other general merchandise when you're doing dangerous goods or hazmat is to be able to up your storage space, so that way when you are sending in 1,000 units of hazmat, 600-700 of them go to one place, 300 go somewhere else, so that way you're able to ship pallets out and get them extremely cheap. Of course, the main goal is to up your storage to as much as you can, so that way you can eventually get to filling a complete pallet going to specific places. When you get to that point, which we're not at, that's when the shipping is going to get extremely cheap, and that's how you see most sellers selling hazmat for really high ROIs. Personally, from our experience, I would say anyone out there who even has 5 cubic feet for hazmat to take full advantage of that, because if you actually just even lose $100-200 trying to up your storage, eventually you're going to get a really good ROI once you start getting your shipping to be extremely cheap. So I highly recommend that you just put the money up front to then unlock that and then keep growing it. Overall, I hope this video helped you guys understand a little bit more about hazmat and what it is. At the end of the day, it's something that you have to actually type in hazmat on the top bar under your Seller Central account. You want to enroll in the program, and then they will eventually reach out to you, and when they do, you want to say yes, you want to sell hazmat, and that way you can start getting a little bit of storage and start sending items in. Now, never request more space if you haven't sent any items in. I recommend you send even like 10-20 units in, take a loss on it, grow the storage space, and then keep going from there. This is something that I highly recommend you obviously to do, because most sellers are not on this or not doing it because it's too difficult. They don't want to spend the time, and then also do not have the money to risk. So if you're able to actually risk some of your money and you're able to risk some of your time, then I highly recommend you to actually get involved in hazmat, because there's tons of profit later on when you start scaling.